Join conference. Well, I think we might be in.
I've got nothing. Wait, webinar with Jensen.
Okay, not broadcasting, so I'm just ready to almost broadcast. So if you can manage the chat box, that would be helpful. I think we're good to go. I've just got to start broadcasting.
I'll make sure that we have a valid code at the end as well.
Yeah, I've just changed the price too. Okay, time check. It's about 58, so I'll just check how I broadcast. Yeah, broadcast is there. No video. All right, I'll just have a quick flip through the deck. And we've got 20 registered for this?
There's more. Hang on a sec. I'll just tell you how many. I can't because I'm not.
That's right. That's right. Not a
problem. I think there's about 30.
Okay. Okay. And just check the time.
I'm also putting an extra slide in for Paul.
Sorry, Carly?
I'm also making a duplicate slide for Paul.
That's fine, I'll just go.
There's a slide in there at the end for Nadia.
Oh, great. Okay. Have you got time to put Paul in as well?
Yep, I'll put Paul in.
Okay, all right, I'm going to start broadcasting.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Okay, I'll hang up from you, Carly.
Okay.
Bye. Good morning, everybody. It's Natasha here. I hope everybody's well. I would love to hear that you can hear me loud and clear. We've had loads of registrations for the event today, so just keen to hear whether you're on the line. I can see a number of participants joining us now. That number box is increasing. I would love to jump onto the chat box and to tell me your name and where you're located, and that you can hear me loud and clear. So if you could do that, that would be absolutely wonderful. Let's just get the chat box up so we can see you. All right, jump into that chat box. Let me know your name and where you're located, maybe even what sort of business you have so that we can tailor this for you. We've got lots of people joining us from around the Victoria. There'll be some from interstate as well. Really great to see so many people have registered for this one. And we do have a prize for that person who's travelled the furthest, travelled in inverted commas, obviously, everyone. Kerry from Wodonga, welcome, and you run a mobile cafe in a park. Excellent. That's wonderful, Kerry. Thank you for coming along. I'd love you to throw into the chat box why you've joined this, what you'd like to learn from it. Obviously, if we power through the content, I've got lots of time for Q&A. Karen, welcome. You're from Beechworth and you work for a community organisation. Welcome, Karen. We're thrilled to have you here as well. And anyone else who's on the call, and making sure that you can hear me loud and clear, that I'm not too soft or not too loud and blurting into your ears, that would be fantastic as well. Just seeing who we've got. I know we've got Kate Ryan, we've got Sarah, we've got Aaron. Welcome, Aaron. Just jump into the chat box. If you've not used Zoom before, it's a really friendly system. You should be able to see down the bottom where you can just add some chat in there, and we are going to be interacting a lot today. And this is being recorded, but if you can answer some little polls and webinars, which I've got Caroline in the background who will be running those for me. So she's my co-host for today, and she's going to be managing the chat box. So please do share your questions, and we'll try and get to all of those. Welcome, Jennifer. Hope you're well. Excited to have you here today. And again, just throw your chats in there. Hi, Erin. You're from Geelong. My sister's just moved to Point Lonsdale, so she's not far from you, and you run a piano bar. Excellent. I'll have to tell my sister to come and visit you. And in actual fact, normally I'm based in Sydney, everyone, but today I'm actually in Melbourne, and I'm running this webinar from the CBD. We've been down here visiting clients, so I feel like I'm not such an imposter given I'm in the state. Hi, Kerry. Kerry says having staff is important, but the right staff is really important. We're about to help out with vet and VCAL students. Is that right? School age, and anything you can offer would be great. I'm hoping we're going to help you. And if anyone wants more information at the end of the session on how they can get some more help, happy to do that. I often use a term, Kerry, that says your employees are your greatest asset. They're also potentially your greatest liability. And so we're all about trying to make sure that you hire the best assets for your business and not liability. So welcome, everybody. There are a number of other people to join us, and Caroline's just in there. So I'm just going to see if I can set Caroline up as a panelist. Let me just see if I can do that. Bear with me, guys. We've had a bit of a scratchy start today. Let me just see how I do that. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, panelists. Caroline, I'm having trouble adding you as a panelist at the moment. Let's see. Add panelist now. Just trying to bear with me. Sorry, guys, we will get started very soon. Just keep putting your questions in there. There you are, Caroline. Promote to panelist. You have been promoted, Caroline. Hopefully you'll be able to jump in now. Welcome, Kellyanne. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you on the call this morning. I'm encouraging everyone to jump into the chat box and let us know where you are and why you've joined this session. Caroline will put a few instructions into that chat box as to how you can interact and get the most out of this webinar that you can. So bear with me. Let's have a look in the chat box and see what else. Okay. Right, guys, in the interest of time, and I know you're all incredibly busy people, so I'm going to kick off. Thank you so much for joining the Small Business Festival Victoria. My name is Natasha Hawker. I'm going to be running the session today. My co-panelist is Caroline Ross. She will be managing the chat box. I want you guys to get as much value out of this webinar as possible. And so do interact. And webinars, you can learn an incredible amount. And we do have some polls that Caroline will be managing in the background, so to see if they are set up. If not, I will just get us to do those manually. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This web event is about how to fire someone without getting sued. And today we're going to talk about a topic that pretty much makes many people feel uncomfortable. It can be considered taboo, and it actually can make some of our clients, and we've had this, feel physically sick when it comes to having to exit someone from the business. It can make some of you cry with frustration or be filled with dread. But believe me, as a manager or a business owner, you really need to develop this skill. And it's a skill that everyone can develop, so there is hope here. And you need to develop the skills so that you can do this legally and professionally, but also sensitively and with compassion. Now, by way of an example, if you use the current average salary in Australia, which has gone up a bit, but for the purposes of this, let's use $60,000 per annum, and you are paying yourself say $50 an hour, and you unfairly dismiss someone, if you get with costs and fines, you would be looking at potentially a payout of about $49,000. $49,700. So you do need to learn this, but don't worry, we are here to help you, and we're going to teach you some great stuff today. So let me page down in our deck and see whether we've got that running. Okay. As I said, my name is Natasha Hawker. I'm the founder and director of Employee Matters, and we're an employee relations company, and I am an employee expert. I specialise in helping small businesses and businesses create exceptional business performance through their employees. Think policies, recruitment and terminations. And at Employee Matters, we are great at helping business owners who have limited time and money hire great people, and just as importantly, fire their non-performers. And I've been working in this field consistently for about 25 years now, both nationally and internationally, including 12 years at Accenture, one of the top global management consulting firms. And I'm routinely featured in the Sydney Morning Herald, ABC Radio and the Huffington Post. And I'm a regular writer for Flying Solo and Her Business. I've been nominated for Telstra Businesswoman of the Year a couple of times now, and I've hired, managed and fired over 15,000 employees in my career to date, both nationally and internationally. And I truly believe that your small business owners, thank you, Nadia, small business owners are the hardest working people in Australia and are typically trying to do the right thing. But I see too many business owners receiving significant fines for illegally firing employees. And I believe it's a fact of life that at some point you are going to need to fire someone. And you also need to understand the legal frameworks and constraints that you work in. So that's what we're going to cover off today. And as you're joining, welcome everybody. Really pleased to have you on the call today. So let me share a little bit about my style. I am a bit of an employee or a HR nerd, and I'm very passionate about my subject. So I tend to get a bit excited and I then talk faster. This section is ideally going to be interactive, so jump onto the chat box and I'll attempt to answer your questions. Probably more towards the end, and we are hopefully going to get a couple of polls ready. We may not be able to do that in time, but we can do that a manual way if we need to. And the session's going to be fast-paced because I want to give you guys as much value as possible from our time together. And I'm going to use some real-life examples and case studies to help you learn. So because I'm planning on packing as much value as possible into the next sort of 45 to 60 minutes, I will show you a way at the end to get more information or more support if you'd like that, on how to fire someone without getting sued or any other thing else that we can help you with. So let's crack on. Just make sure everyone can hear me. So please do stay with us till the end, because at the end I'm going to be sharing a performance management guide. That's a how-to guide on how to manage these processes moving forward. But you actually need to be on the webinar at the end. I know you guys are all very busy people to get your hands on this tool. It's a very comprehensive guide that will tell you step by step how to manage somebody out of the business. I'm going to share some really good stuff with you, which could potentially save you thousands and thousands of dollars. So do make the most of your time investment with me today. What I suggest you do is turn your mobile off, turn your emails off, grab a pen and paper, take notes, and even if you can, make yourself comfortable with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, which will make you do this session so much better and get more out of it. So before we crack on to the content, and we may be able to do a poll here. Let me just see if I've got a poll. I haven't got any polls, so we're going to have to do this.
Hi, Natasha. We haven't got an official poll to launch as in conventionally, but I have put the question into the chat box. Has anyone had to fire an employee before? And we have one yes so far.
Great. And
and someone has said no.
We've got some yeses.
Yeses, okay, they're coming in now. We've got a mixed response. So we've got a few yeses and we've got a couple of no's.
And everybody, thank you for working with us with the chat box. That's great. So the most of you, someone's had to do quite a few. And I think that's a great thing. And I'm not going to necessarily call your names out because I know some people can be sensitive unless you're happy for me to. Let me know that in the chat box. One of our people, and I think this might have gone to everyone anyway, to the panelists, said quite a few. Now, I think that's a great question and a great response. And thank you for your honesty there, because my view is if you hire well, you're less likely to have to fire. That's a whole other topic area which we can do another time. But I would suggest that large business can afford non-performers. They shouldn't have them either, but small business can't. And even for those of you who have not had the pleasure, I use that word very loosely, of terminating someone from your business, it's highly likely at some point you're going to have to do that. So well done on sharing that, and I think the majority of you have had to do that, so you're in the right place so that the next time you're going to know what you need to do. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. On the 4th of September 2001, and I'm sure that date probably rings some bells for some of you who are my age, maybe not some of our younger people, I actually transferred to the London office of a large professional services firm as their HR manager, and I had a group of about 500 employees, and I walked smack bang into needing to make about 50 people redundant. And I'd hardly put my feet down in this new country before I was having to fire 50 people, and I didn't know the legislation at that time. And in the process, I actually acquired the name from the partners, a new nickname as the Angel of Death. Imagine I'd just arrived. I'd never done a redundancy in the UK. I was single. I was looking for friends, and being the newly appointed Angel of Death was not going to help my cause. And legally in the UK, the partner had to have the conversation with the employee, but they needed to follow a very carefully crafted script to make the redundancy legal. But despite, and I use this very carefully, a lot of these partners were literally rocket scientists. They were strategy partners, had MBAs and degrees coming out of everywhere in their body. But they literally fell to pieces when it came to having this very difficult conversation. And what I realised, was that sometimes they were put in a position where it was highly emotional, and you had people literally begging for their jobs. And what I realised at that time was I actually had a gift for having these difficult conversations. I could facilitate these conversations to be legal, professional, empathetic, and I could actually help not only the employee, but I could coach the partner through the difficult conversation, enabling them to deliver these messages consistently. And this was not something I desperately grew up wanting to do, but I do know that I can help people at this space. And the reality is that these conversations absolutely need to happen. So let's talk about how we can help you have those conversations. But as tough as these conversations are, they can be done well, they can be done legally, they can be done empathetically, and they can help you grow your business. And even better, every one of you on this call can actually learn how to fire someone without getting sued. So that's what we want to do today. So when you think about your performance management or exiting people from the business, I expect that you might feel or think that you don't have enough time for this. You lack the knowledge to be able to have these conversations. You're frightened of getting a call from Fair Work or a letter to attend a mediation session. You don't know what you don't know. You've not been trained in this. And you think that the laws are so biased towards the employee that it's impossible to exit anyone from your business. And I wonder whether any of those resonate with you. But what you really want is to be stress-free. You don't want to have those employee headaches. You want to have a fast-growing business, or a business that you can sleep well at night. I have a friend who said, running a small business would be so much fun if I didn't have employees. And she's not alone. I imagine many of you on this call feel that way too. What you also want is to have a high-performance team, a team that is highly skilled and capable, but also highly motivated to work for you, and have the knowledge that you're actually compliant, and have the confidence to have these conversations with ease when you need to. But I think what you really want is relief, and that's relief from the stress that having employees can bring, and that you have a successful business. And I don't think that's too much to ask. I'm guessing pretty much everyone on this call would like that. So, Caroline, if you could put this into the chat box. So the next poll I'd like to give you a chance to answer is, which of the following statements do you believe to be true? And you can tick as many as you like. Can you be forced to, I'll just see how Caroline's going to put this in the chat box. Can you be forced to take an employee back once you've dismissed them? Do you need to give 3 warnings before dismissal? Do you need to keep employee records after someone's left? And can you be ordered to pay compensation to the employee if they have been unfairly dismissed? Caroline, if you can put those in there and just see if you can label them 1, 2, and 3 and 4, and people if they can put just 1, 2, and 3, or whichever ones they believe to be true. So I'll read that again. Can you be forced to take an employee back once you've dismissed them? Do you need to give 3 warnings before dismissal? Do you need to keep employee records after someone has left? And can you be ordered to pay compensation, that's number 4, to the employee if they've been unfairly dismissed? So they're coming up there now, and if everyone could just take a moment. Great, Aaron's answered 1, 3, and 4. 3, do you need to keep employee records after anyone has left? And the last one is 4, can you be ordered to pay compensation? Kate's saying 1, 3, and 4. Well done, Kate. Everyone else, if you can quickly put your responses in, that would be fantastic. Jennifer, well done. 1 yes, 2 no, 3 yes, 4 yes. Yes to all, Kerry, well done. Okay, I'll just give everyone a minute or so to put that in, and then we'll kick on. So this one's an interesting one, and many of you are on the right track. The actual one, the only one that is wrong here is you do not need to give 3 warnings before dismissal. That's the only one. And that is a very historic view. There used to be a piece of colloquial legislation that was known as 3 strikes and you're out. The others are actually true. You can be forced to take an employee back. It's called reinstatement. Typically happens with employees over 45 years old because they have less chance of finding another role. You do need to keep employee records after someone's left, especially if you end up in court. Document everything. You cannot document things enough. And you can be ordered to pay compensation to the individual if they've been unfairly dismissed. Thank you, guys, for adding your comments in there. And the more you put into these webinar, guys, the more you'll get out of it. Okay. So what are the problems? Why are people worried about this? Well, first of all, you're worried about getting sued because you know about the high numbers of people, particularly small business owners, that are hauled in front of the Fair Work Commission. And you've got a right to be worried because, big business have large HR departments that help this and they have access to legal advice. And some statistics are generally last year, I think in one quarter, there were over 3,500 unfair dismissal cases lodged. And over 57% of those cases had a finding where the termination was unfair. So, and probably compensation ordered as a result. Often we are called in to help win a non-performing employee, but the thing that makes me really quite sad is the number of times when we say to a business owner, hey, Kerry, how long has George not been performing? And Kerry goes, about 5 years. And just imagine the loss of productivity that this has cost the business, not only from George, but also from your other employees that are really frustrated when they see what George has been able to get away with. And this impacts the morale across your business or the engagement incredibly. And it also impacts their view of you as a leader. And as I said before, large corporates can afford non-performers, small business definitely can't. The last part here is, or the third point here is that often, as you see with the poll, many of our clients don't understand the legislation and still think 3 strikes and you're out is okay. And the reason why, and this is really important, and write this one down, the reason, I've just dropped one too far ahead there. The reason why most business owners want to terminate someone from their business is actually reasonable. Where you come unstuck is you don't do it legally, you don't follow the steps. And unfortunately, ignorance is not a defence. So essentially, most business owners are very frightened about getting sued and having to pay out large dollars, or even worse still, having them come back. And if we look at that employee who's earning $60,000, if they get the full entitlement under the law, they can get up to 6 months' salary of $30,000. That's a lot of money. And that's an amount of money that would put many small business owners out of business. So What you do actually want, though, is not to be sued. And who doesn't? Let's face it, it's very time-consuming, it's very expensive, and it's not good PR for you and your business. And as we've said before, it may put you out of business. So you might all be aware of the recent 7-Eleven cases where Fair Work slammed 7-Eleven franchises for deliberately falsifying records, and the convenience store giant has had to pay out a significant amount of money in unpaid wages. Typically what most business owners want is they want to be able to take action. You want to feel empowered. I once spoke to a client who's considering taking on her first employee, and she wanted this employee to basically free her up so she could grow her business. But she said that all the employee relations stuff that she had to do made her feel sick. And information is power, and you can and you should terminate non-performers and make employees redundant where you need to, or make their role, retrench them. Last thing I wanted to make a point here is once you've learnt this skill, you're able to manage it with confidence and knowing that you can do it and how and when to do it. Your employees won't be able to distract you from your legal rights as business owners to exit employees that aren't right for your business. So let's look at building a high performance and a low maintenance team. I always say, as I said at the beginning, your employees are your greatest asset. They're also potentially your greatest liability. So businesses that build high performance teams, in other words, they've got a whole lot of employees that are super good at their jobs and that are low maintenance and that have high levels of engagement, reap the financial rewards. These guys outcompete their competitors. Let's do the first teaching point here, support people. The support role is a critical role in the process of having a difficult conversation, and this is the reason that many business owners come unstuck. They're not aware that they have a legal obligation to offer this to an employee. Legally, you need to offer an employee a support person if they're going through any of the following types of conversations. Write these ones down. Either it's a redundancy conversation, a restructure, a performance management conversation. In other words, they're just not doing their job well, or a misconduct issue where maybe they're turning up for late for work, or they're bullying someone in the organisation. That's what's deemed to be misconduct. Having these conversations, though, are not only difficult for you, but they're actually really difficult. And believe me, because I've actually been on the other side of the table as well, they're difficult for the employee, and they're often ambushed. And they have no understanding of why they're coming to a meeting. Let me tell you something else, and write this down. It should never come as a surprise to a person who's terminated. They should see it coming. And if they don't, then you've not done the process particularly well. They know they're coming to a meeting and they're suspecting it's not going to be good news. But having a support person allows you to meet the test of unfair dismissal, which was the termination harsh, unjust, or unreasonable? So if they'd like to bring someone along, then they need to tell you who's coming prior to the meeting, who could be a support person. It could be a family friend or a member. It could be another employee. It could be a union rep or delegate, or it could be a lawyer. But at the beginning of the meeting, and this is really crucial, write this bit down as well, it's really important that you explain the role of a support person so that everybody's very clear. The support person can provide emotional support during the meeting. They can take notes during the meeting, and they can assist in the discussion, especially if the employee is from a non-English speaking background. But they cannot advocate on behalf of the individual. They cannot voice their own opinions. They are purely there so that after the meeting they can say, hey, George, remember when Natasha said this? I think you need to be aware of that. Or remember when Natasha did that? Or I think this is what she meant by that. All right, let's look at a case study which will help hopefully give you some context here. The Fair Work Act expressly requires the Fair Work Commission to take into account, when considering whether a dismissal was harsh, unjust, or unreasonable, whether the employer unreasonably refused a request from an employee to have a support person present in relation to the discussion. So when you're going to have that conversation, you might set it up and say, hey, George, we need to have a bit of a serious chat with you tomorrow. What time suits you? We're thinking 11 o'clock. And I think it would be fair for you to bring someone along as a support person, and then you could tell them who that support person is. Now, I know everyone immediately goes to, well, they're going to have a whole lot of worries about, who to bring someone along. but it's better than having someone there than being on their own. If they can't make that time, you need to reschedule to a suitable time when they can bring somebody suitable along for that meeting. If you force that meeting, that would be deemed to be breaching the unfair dismissal test. So I think if you had some tools at your disposal, such as a performance management guide to assist you in the process, that would probably make this easier for you. And the next thing that you're probably going to need is a counselling meeting template to help you document the meeting legally. And I imagine that would be quite helpful for you. And it will give you the support that you need and more confidence to conduct the meeting, which is what you want. You want to be able to do this with confidence. So another question for you, and quickly put this into the chat box. Were you aware that to refuse a support person to attend would be an automatic fail of your unfair dismissal test and leave you open for a breach fine? So if you could just throw that into the chat box, that would be fantastic. Oh, you're getting speedier. Fantastic. Aaron wasn't aware, and that's perfectly fine, Aaron. I would suggest that 85% of our clients weren't aware either. The other tip here, and it's not in my deck, but I'm going to share it with you now while the other people join and put their yes, no in there as to whether they were aware a support person was required. There is a fabulous, and I'm all about sharing hack tools. There is a fabulous tool called REV, R-E-V. It basically records a verbal conversation and then documents it. If everyone else can just put their things into the chat box, that would be brilliant. And then it transcribes it. You should take detailed notes. I would strongly suggest that. You can't legally at the moment record that meeting without their permission, but you can document it in writing without their permission. So that would be something I would strongly encourage you to do. Okay, in the interest of time, let's move on. So, let me bear with. So, right now as an employee expert, I'm going to help you make a decision, because you too can get these results and get better results, or you can decide to just keep doing what you're doing, especially for the lovely lady who admitted she's had to let a number of people go. One way that you can fire someone without getting sued is actually to offer a support person. That will help you meet that criteria. So let's talk about what are the steps to take to make sure when you're managing performance or misconduct in the workplace. So I think you've often experienced this where you're beginning to sweat because you know you've got to have one of those difficult and awkward conversations. Often you don't sleep well the night before. But this type of conversation is one most people don't want to have. But, George needs to know that he's consistently late for work and what that causes the business in terms of problems for the business, problems for his colleagues, and, when he's unreliable, that's what's an issue. And you want to make these complex conversations much easier. So let's talk about how you can do that. Most of you are often frightened that you're going to say the wrong thing. You often don't know how to control their emotional responses, particularly, and apologies to the men on the call, but often men, when they're in a counselling conversation and the woman cries, they find that incredibly awkward. And I always suggest that there's always a box of tissues available. You don't have to have them on the table straight away, but there's somewhere discreet that you can get them if you need to. And many business owners don't know how to start the conversation, and they risk getting bogged down in a detailed he said, she said conversation, which typically goes off topic and is not very productive. So what happens then is that the conversation goes badly and you're worried you're not going to get the results that you need, and which is usually one of two things. Either the performance improves, and I would encourage everyone on this call, if you have these conversations and if you have very open conversations about performance, and my internet connection is a bit unstable. I'm hoping you can all still hear me. Is everybody still able to hear me, Caroline?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
No problems at all.
Wonderful. Hopefully it's not going to phase in. But what you want to have and let me be really clear here, every performance management discussion does not have to end with the individual leaving the organisation. Often if you have these conversations early enough, you can turn that performance around. And sometimes people go, if you told me that, I would have known that and I would have changed my performance. So that's what you actually want. You want them to correct. And so I often tell our clients, when you've got a new hire, I would be very clear about what success looks like in week 1, week 4, week 6, week 8, week 10, so that it's very clear, tick box. By week 10, I'm expecting you're doing this. And then everybody's very clear with what's working and what's not working. So let's talk about how you can have more confidence in the dialogue of the conversation. So what you want to have is confidence in having these conversations, and they do get easier. If you know your rights, and if the employee's rights you know as well, and you're clear about the process. What you also want to have is that you want to make sure that you deal with those emotional responses. And it's quite reasonable for them to have that. You know, you're talking about their job and their security. But you still want to get results. And I think the biggest way you can do this really well is to write a script that you can deliver with confidence. I do all of my stuff like that. Even now, and I've been doing this for a really long time, is I will script out how I think that conversation is going to go. And then make sure that I'm getting the points out that I want to get off, and so that I'm not railroaded by it when it gets emotional. So, but let's face it, what your greatest desire is, I imagine, on this call is to exit employees easily, quickly and legally, so that you don't get an email from the Fair Work Commission 3 weeks later with a request for you to attend mediation. So let's talk about the steps. First steps is you need to counsel for minor issues. So performance counselling has a couple of things. So say, for example, somebody's been late a few times. These are minor. You still might put a file note to their personnel file, and you would just have a conversation along the lines of, George, you know, I really need to talk to you. This is not working. We need you to get here at 9 o'clock. That's what time we start. So you need to be ready to start work. When the performance issue is considered more serious, then it's really important that all warnings are documented, whether that's verbal or written, and there's no limit to the number of warnings that must be given, only that the process is deemed fair. So obviously the more warnings that are given, that's going to reduce the likelihood that an unconsidered process is taking place. And the employee should be very aware of their predicament. It's also really important that you offer training. So it's not very fair, and we see this sometimes in business owners. They go, George hasn't picked it up. And I said, well, what training did you give George? And they said, I spent an hour with him when he started. Well, there's no wonder George isn't picking up the skills. Obviously, the more complex the role, the more training that's required. But you need, you know, as part of that unfair dismissal test, you need to have been seen to be showing training options for them. And it's only after all of those above strategies have been exhausted that the employer can lawfully consider a termination. So let's script the conversation. At the beginning of the meeting, you say what the purpose of the meeting is. You talk about the fact that walk through each of the performance issues, giving them a chance to respond. And you should provide evidence. You know, for example, if you're talking about breakages, you might say, can you think of anything that would assist you to not break as many vases as you're putting them through production? And the other thing you need to do is you need to review. So you might say, I'm going to speak to you next week and we're going to confirm how you're going, and we're going to see whether you're improving your KPIs. And summarise the meeting at the end of it. So let's talk about how to deal with emotion. It absolutely can and will happen. You need to be prepared. You need to stay calm, and you need to offer a short break. So what might happen if somebody has been particularly upset, you might say to them, we're going to have a little break here. Let's go and we'll regroup in half an hour. Go and grab a cup of tea, and then we'll catch up back then. That will help you manage that emotion, and then when they've come back, they'll be a bit more controlled. If they can't continue, then you may need to reschedule for another day, and that's perfectly reasonable. You guys are doing really well. Thank you for hanging in there. This is a case study. This is a real life experience. One of our clients had to make an employee redundant, and this employee was likely to be litigious, highly likely to be litigious. And the business owner and the employee had become friends, and they had even been to each other's weddings. And our client was really quite scared and very nervous about having to have this conversation. So what we did with Christina is we shared the script with her, and we did some coaching and role play, and we actually practiced to prepare her. And then we gave her the script so that she could have this with her during the conversation to keep her on track. And I actually sat in on the conversation with her just in case it went off track and she needed help, but she pulled it off herself. And when it was over, she gave me this enormous hug. And the outcome here was that the employee exited peacefully and that our client did not receive an unfair dismissal claim. And I think the reason for that was the preparation, and it was done professionally and it was done legally, and that helped. So let's talk about scripts. Now you've got this information, you two are going to be better informed about how to manage a poor performer and potentially make someone redundant. Businesses change. Redundancy is there as a tool for business owners. If, for example, you've got a component of your business that doesn't exist anymore, technology's wiped it out, you're going to either have to redeploy those employees to a new part of your business, or you're going to have to close it, and that's okay. But I expect that it's going to be easier for you to have a whole lot of letter templates around managing that redundancy documentation, and also scripts for the conversation. I'm sure that's going to help you as well. So let's talk about what next. As I said earlier, I was once known as the angel of death after making about 50 people redundant. And I've done a lot of these conversations, so I know what works, and just as importantly, I know what doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is help you make a decision here around to get these results for yourself, or you can decide, keep doing what you're doing. So let's talk about some of the risk here, and I'm conscious of our time. What's a breach going to cost you? And I think this is maybe going to come as a bit of a shock to you guys. So imagine how you might feel if you receive an email to attend your attendance at a mediation session to hear the matter regarding the unfair dismissal complaint from George, and you know that the reality is you probably didn't terminate his services correctly, and you don't have time to fill out the 8 pages, and it is 8 pages of documentation that needs to be completed before you attend, nor quite frankly can you afford a day out of the office to attend to the mediation, especially when you know that George conservatively has probably already cost you thousands or hundreds of dollars in errors and lost productivity. So let's talk about how you might be feeling. You're going to be feeling cranky because, just because you didn't do this, you didn't do it legally, it's going to cost you money. And often we find employers put up, and then they blow up and they do something in the heat of the moment, and that's where they come unstuck. The other thing is you don't have time to go to Fair Work, and you're peeved, quite frankly, because you think you deserve to be fired in this instance. And often we find, it's just as a byproduct. Usually when somebody goes, the rest of the team are absolutely ecstatic because they know he's been not a good player for a long time. So you know what this probably means is you're going to have to pay for a breach and potentially legal fees, and you're also going to have to pay for lost time in the office. So what you do want to know is how to fire it legally. You also want to know how to do this quickly and effectively, and you're relieved because you've actually got rid of the problem. So that's what you want to get done. Now, what I need for you, though, is for many business owners, there's still a frustration about running a business. It's hard enough without the risk of having to pay out a non-performer just because you forgot to offer a support person. And this doesn't change the fact that they couldn't actually do their job. And so you can understand why many business owners are really frustrated in this situation. So let's be really clear here. So how can you fail the unfair dismissal test? And write these down. You need to give the employee an opportunity to respond to your performance concerns. You need to ask them, is there any reason for the drop in your performance? If you don't give an employee that chance to respond, you will breach the fairness test. And let's face it, there is a whole lot going on in their life. So say, for example, we had this happen with a building client. They had a foreman who'd been with them for 20 years and his performance dipped. And they couldn't understand it because he'd been a top performer. And he was a very Aussie bloke and he hadn't mentioned anything. And when we started talking to him, he actually revealed that his wife of 30 years had left him. And he just was devastated, and it affected him. He couldn't function at work because he was so gutted about what was happening in his personal life. And that was the reason. And if he'd not divulged that, then, maybe there would have been an issue and he could have been fired without divulging that, and then there would have been another issue. So that is an important thing. You must make the performance objectives reasonable. So, for example, if somebody has to bring in $5,000 worth of revenue a month and suddenly you put them on performance management and you double it. That's not reasonable. And the last thing is, it's really important because your employees can be awarded up to 6 months' salary and or reinstatement, as we talked about earlier, especially if they're over 55 or 45. So let's talk about our unfair dismissal calculator. On our website, I had a concern that business owners were not aware enough of what legal risk and costs they were exposed to, and they were oblivious to that. So we've built a little unfair dismissal calculator. So use your hourly rate, whatever you pay yourself, and your employee's rate, and it will give you an estimate of what a complaint would cost you. Also gives you some of the time frames and costs. So my advice is to do this right so that hopefully you won't get to mediation. But if you do need some encouragement to learn how to do this, then work out what your costs are going to be. We're going to email you a complimentary calculator. So if everyone sends us, I think, Carly, we might have everyone's email address. If everyone...
I do, and they'll all be getting their calculator later on this afternoon.
You're wonderful. Thank you for that, Carly. That's brilliant. That will give people a bit of a feel for it. So let's look, how much does it cost for an employee to make a mistake? The employee calls Fair Work, and it costs $69.80 to lodge a complaint. They have to do it within 3 weeks of you leaving. So if you haven't heard anything about the 4 or 5 week mark, you can go, phew, there's nothing coming. But so there's very little barrier to entry here, and they know that they could potentially get up to 6 months' salary. And guess what? If their friends don't know this, and their family certainly do. So really important. So now that you have that calculator, you can estimate your own costs. Have a play, and I hope that helps you, and I hope it shows you that you can't afford not to know how to do this. So let's look at, again, hopefully that unfair dismissal calculator will help you. I'm going to help you make a decision, though, to get better at this, or again, you can decide to keep doing what you're doing. My view is it's a numbers game, and employees are much more cluey about their rights, and it's really important that you are cluey about your rights, and you have a right to run a business with great employees. You deserve that. So let's make sure that you get that. So let's talk about how you can avoid being sued and spending unnecessary time at the commission and expense. And I'd like to say, I'm not sure why you turned up today. Maybe it's because you're finding managing employees more difficult than what you thought it would be, or you actually need to fire someone, or you want to de-risk a termination or a yucky conversation. But you know that an hour's not enough time for me to help you fully. So as I said at the beginning of the event, there is a way we can assist you more. So let's tell you a little bit about that. I'm guessing that most of you would like to move from risk to risk-free, from complex to easy, and from costing you money to actually saving you money. And I think you probably know also, bear with me, sorry, I didn't mean to do that ignorance is not a defence. Small business owners are the ones who are turning up in the commission all the time. So get some advice in this area. The second thing is that you can and should exit employees from your business, whether it's a performance issue, misconduct, or redundancy. And remember, large corporates can afford to have non-performance, but you can't. The last lesson I'd like you to take from our session today is to know that your employees can make or break your business. Make sure that you get the most out of your recruitment spend. You hire great people, and if they don't fit, move them on. Really quick one, anyone who is hiring at the moment, we use a tool called Harrison's Assessment. I love Harrison's. It actually maps them to the job, and it says, is Natasha a fit to be a HR manager? Yes, she's a 90% fit, and here are all her traits that make her a great fit for that. Really fabulous, fabulous tool. So to get these results, you could do a couple of things. To manage to fire someone without getting sued, you could hire a HR manager if you can afford one. You could get some expensive legal advice, or you can get a consultant in, and we can help you if you need to do that. You could do it the slow or the fast way. The slow way could result in a breach, and you could invest a sizable chunk of your time, or you could work with someone to sort this out, or you could go with a tried and tested methodology. So our solution, this is where I share how we can help. We developed a hire to fire toolkit, And I built it with you guys in mind. I built it so that small business owners can have access to great tools and templates to run their business legally and to get the help they need. But our toolkit is not for everyone. It wouldn't work for you if you don't want to take the time to do this properly. If you don't really care about your employees, this is not the solution for you. Or if you don't care about your legal obligations. And believe me, guys, the fact that you guys are on this call, you obviously do. But we have come across clients in the past where they actually are happy to wing it and run the risk. The Hire to Fire toolkit is also not for you if you don't have employees or you're a solo operator. Or you're a large corporate, that's not for you either. Wonderful. I could just jumping in the text, and I'm going to have some time for Q&A, so let's jump along. So I designed it for you guys. I want you to not get into trouble. I want you to grow a great business. I want you to feel like you've got up to date, and I want you to be able to go, oh, I've got to do an exit interview. Where's my exit interview template so that I can run that professionally? I want to do a great interview, so I hire. Where can I get some great interview questions? And I wanted it to be both a timely and a cost-effective solution. So I wanted to take it from basically risk to risk-free, and I want to make sure that you guys have all the tools and templates that you would get if you had a HR manager in your business, and that you can do this stuff really well, and that you can look professional and be professional, and that you can attract the best employees, because the businesses that do that and build high-performance teams do the best. So there's also weekly webinars. So, for example, we run a webinar that's how do I do a great interview, and you can listen in and access that training whenever you want 24/7. So that's really helpful. You can also jump in and do an Ask an Employee expert session. So you might have, oh, I've got a question. I want to speak to Helen, or I want to speak to Caroline. What do I do? The last thing I wanted to share with you is I wrote a book, and it's called From Hire to Fire and Everything in Between, and it's for sale at Dimmicks for $24.95, or you can buy it online and I can send you a copy, signed copy, or you can buy a $5, I think it's $5 PDF version. I wrote this because I wanted to give business owners a dog-eared companion that they could look up every time they've got to have one of those icky conversations. So we have a special offer. We normally sell our Hire to Fire toolkit for $54 per month. So $700 a year. It will give you, I can guarantee you will be hiring better, managing better, and exiting better, and it's going to save you thousands of dollars. But we've given you a discount because you guys are so special. So if you put in that code, save me 20%, you'll get a 20% discount on that. And we want you to be satisfied. So, if you don't like it, if you don't think you're getting what you want, you could get out after 4 months, and you won't need to stay in the deal. There are limits though. This is a special deal just for the Small Business Victoria. So this is only available today, and after today it reverts to its normal price of $54 per month. So that voucher code again, save me 20%, and that will help you. Now, I just wanted to share with you, we're expanding across Australia at the moment. Nadia is one of our employee experts. So say you want a bit more hands-on help, Nadia can come into your business and work with you on a program of work, and she can come in and out of your business as and when you need. So say you have to have one of those difficult conversations and you want someone to hold you or cover your back while you do that, Nadia could come in and do that. We also have another employee expert, Paul Ackerman, who's just joined us as well. So we've got two in Melbourne now because we're getting so much work done in here. So I wanted to say thank you so much for coming along today. And I can see some of you are starting to go on and look at the Hire to Fire toolkit. I would encourage you. I've put my best knowledge from the last 25 years in this, and it's going to make your job as a business owner significantly cheaper. So welcome. We look forward to working with you. All that's left for me to say is it's been fabulous having you. I know I have absolutely churned through that, but I wanted to give you as much content as I could. I'm more than happy now to open up to the chat box, and you guys have stayed on till the very end. So well done. You are not only going to get the unfair dismissal calculator, you're also going to get that performance management guide that Caroline will email out to you as well. So I'm happy to talk about anything HR related. So if you want to pop any questions in there, let me know, and we can go anywhere you want. I'm passionate about business owners understanding what their employees cost them. I'm passionate about building engaged teams. I love recruitment. So happy to talk about whatever works for you guys. And I'm going to have a drink because I am very thirsty after that. Any questions? Or I bamboozled you all with too much information? Yes, you are able to book a discovery session with Nadia or Paul. That's a complimentary session where they just talk about your business, and then they will share with you how we can help. And if it works, you take it. If it doesn't work, that's absolutely fine. You're going to have learned something about it. What changes if the employee is casual? Excellent question, Aaron. Casual employees are fabulous because they're an incredibly flexible instrument. A couple of things to be wary of, Aaron, is that under whatever award you're under, there are some limits under some awards as to how long you can have a casual employee. Let me try and be clearer about that. So McDonald's Fast Food Award, you can be casual for 20 years. But say it might be under the Allied Health Professionals Award, after 12 months they have to go to permanent part-time, because the view from the government under those awards is if you're still using them after 12 months, they should be permanent part-time or permanent full-time. As a casual employee, they don't have protections for unfair dismissal, unless they could argue that they're actually not a casual employee. They're a permanent employee because they've been with you over 12 months and your award says that they can only be casual for 12 months. So that changes. So the other thing that I haven't touched on today is probation. So unfair dismissal, somebody can take you for unfair dismissal. If your head count is under 15, they can take you after 12 months service. So I always say practice on your probationary employees so that when it is somebody who can claim general protections under unfair dismissal, you know what you're doing and you're able to do it. I hope that helps, Aaron. Another great question from Jennifer. How do you manage all the performance paperwork process? We want to use an online cloud-based system to manage personnel files. Look, people get really het up about documentation. I would recommend for you, Jennifer, is when you're having one of those conversations, bring in one of your trusted employees to document the right script, basically, like a file note. They actually take down every word that they can that the individual says. You then type that up because there's going to be loads of spelling or whatever errors in that, and then you give it to the individual to say, this is a record of our conversation. Are you happy to say that that is an accurate record of our conversation? If they don't want to sign it, that's fine. You just say, I believe this is you sign it. I believe this is an accurate record of our conversation. I offered it to George, but he refused to sign. That's fine. And that goes into the file. The other one is that Rev recording system. And then just upload that paperwork into your cloud-based system to manage personnel files. I think that's really, really important. I'd love to know how many employees everybody's got on this call, because that will help me understand what some of your challenges would be. My pleasure, Aaron. 23. Yeah, you see, so Aaron, this is an interesting one. Statistically, most businesses at 57 put on a full-time HR manager. But what they often do, and I would encourage you not to make this mistake, and maybe, Aaron, we should have a talk about another solution that might work better for you, is that they put on a junior HR bot who's actually quite useless for them, because all they're really good for is filing, paperwork, a little bit of recruitment, a little bit of ER. And what you probably need, I suspect, Aaron, is more the full range, so that they can do that, what I call hack work and admin, but they can also do strategic HR. Because 23 is a reasonable sized business, and you're going to start to, if you're not already, getting some growing pains and start to find that you got lucky the first few hires, and now we're getting some people that aren't quite reaching the grade. Jennifer, again, that 15, you're on that magic number. So now your employees can take you for unfair dismissal. I'm right, Aaron, okay. Now your employees, Jennifer, can take you for unfair dismissal, and this is the same for Aaron, in 6 months. So if you're not managing your probation period well, you're going to have some struggles there. So, that's what I would have expected for you, Aaron. At 23, you're going to start to feel some employee headaches coming on. And I always say to business owners, you just need to know how to do 3 things better: hire better, manage better, and exit better. Both your non-performing employees, so you get them out the door legally, but also your ones that you might like to get back in the future. Okay, Jennifer's saying, can you extend the probation period to 6 months? Most use 3. Absolutely. But you can't extend it beyond 6 months, Jennifer, because the law says that obviously 6 months is when people can start to access it. I would encourage you to actually develop a really clever probation period. Remember, I talked about earlier in the session where you should have, I reckon, at the end of week 1, say, what's your business, Jennifer? Can you just type that in for me? Like, what do your employees do? What you should do is say, for example, I haven't seen any construction plan. Okay, so as a construction worker, at the end of week 1 on the job, here's all the things that you should be able to do. At the end of month 1, here's what we expect, month 2. And you track that and you have KPIs for them. And then it's very clear as you work through that whether they're actually doing it or not. And guess what? They self-select themselves out if they realise that they're not going to cut it, which will save you a lot of grief. I would also encourage everyone on this call to actually do a bit of assessment testing, not only Harrison's, that's a psychometric, but try and, for example, if they're a plumber, give them a little exam as part of the recruitment process so that you get a sense of their level of what they do. Aaron, I think that would be a great suggestion for you. I'm not sure what your business is, but that's what I'd be doing as well. So recruitment is a whole other topic that we could get into, and it's probably a good time to mention it. If you want some more help, guys, go onto our website. We've got a whole lot of free checklists and to-do lists, which will help you. We also have a newsletter. Caroline, can you put that in there? Where I do little video tips. So I'll say to them, why do I need to do a reference check, or what do I need to do to protect myself from sexual harassment and my employees from sexual harassment in the workplace? So there's loads of good stuff on there. Anyway, guys, we are right on the hour. I hope this has been incredibly useful to you. If you want more help, reach out to us. By all means, sign up for that newsletter. You get a whole great load of articles and tips that will be helpful, and videos. My pleasure, Kerry. I hope you learned something today. As I said, guys, your employees are your greatest asset. They're also potentially your greatest liability. Karen, you're not married to a Rob, are you? I was out for dinner with a Rob Nankovitz last night. It would be funny if you were. Aaron, my pleasure. No, all right. It's an unusual name, so I thought I would check. It's a small world and it's getting smaller. Guys, thank you so much for attending. I hope you've got value. If you need our help, we're here to help. And by all means, have a great day, and remember, your employees really do matter.
This is Caroline. Thank you also, everyone, for bearing with us and attending. I'll be in touch with you all later on today with the resources that we discussed earlier, and also some links again for you to take advantage of, like our newsletter subscription.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a great Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is.